I want to make sure I tell this the right way. Not because I'm looking for sympathy, I'm past that now, but because for a long time, I stayed quiet. I kept the peace. I smiled at holiday dinners and told myself that this was just how families worked, that I was being too sensitive, that a good mother didn't keep score. 63 years of living taught me that keeping quiet isn't the same as keeping the peace. Sometimes it just means you're the only one bleeding. My name is Dorothy. I was married for 38 years to a man named Frank, and together we raised 2 daughters in a 4-bedroom house in Greenville, South Carolina. I gave those girls everything I had, packed their lunches, drove them to piano lessons and soccer practice and SAT prep, sat up past midnight when they were sick, when they were heartbroken, when they needed someone to talk to. I worked 26 years as a licensed practical nurse, came home smelling like hospital-grade soap, and still managed to have dinner on the table by 7. Frank died of a heart attack on a Tuesday morning in March, 4 years ago. He was in the garage changing the oil on his truck, and I was inside making coffee. And by the time I got to him, there was nothing I could do. 38 years, and it ended that fast. What happened after that? That's the part I need to tell you. My older daughter, Renee, and her husband, Dale, had been living about 40 minutes away in Rock Hill. They had a nice house, 2 incomes, no children. For the first year after Frank died, things seemed okay. Renee called regularly. Dale would come by on weekends to help with yard work. I thought we were finding our footing. The second year was when things started to shift. Renee began mentioning gently at first that the house was a lot for one person to manage, that I was getting older, that it might make more sense for me to simplify. I didn't read too much into it at first. She wasn't wrong that the house was big. 4 bedrooms, a yard, a basement Frank had spent 15 years finishing. It was more square footage than one 62-year-old woman needed. But I loved that house. Frank and I had bought it in 1991. We'd replaced the roof twice, redone the kitchen, planted the dogwood trees out front ourselves with a borrowed shovel. That house was 30 years of my life in the walls. Then Renee and Dale started coming over more frequently, and the conversations got more specific. They were tired of the commute to Charlotte, where Dale had recently taken a new job. Rock Hill wasn't working anymore. The timing, Renee said, made sense. They could move in, keep an eye on me, and take over the mortgage. Take over the mortgage, I repeated. Well, you're retired, Mom. Your income is fixed. It would just be easier. I want to be clear. I was not a burden. I had my Social Security, which was nearly $1,900 a month. I had Frank's small pension from his years at the county. I had a paid-off car. I wasn't wealthy, but I was not drowning. I had been managing that house and those bills on my own for 2 years without asking anyone for a single dollar. But Renee had a way of talking that made you feel like disagreeing was the same as being difficult. She was always calm, always reasonable sounding, and somehow by the end of every conversation, I found myself wondering if I was the unreasonable one. The conversation about the power of attorney happened in October, 2.5 years after Frank died. They came on a Sunday. Dale brought a bottle of wine. Renee had printed out paperwork. She explained it carefully, the way you'd explain something to a child, that a durable power of attorney would simply allow her to help manage my finances, just in case. In case of what? I asked. In case you get confused, she said, the way older people sometimes do. In case something happens and bills need to be paid. It's just practical, Mom. You wouldn't want the lights to turn off because you forgot. I had not once forgotten to pay a bill. Not once. But I was tired that day, and she seemed so certain. And Dale was nodding along like it was the most obvious thing in the world. And I thought, she's my daughter. She wouldn't do anything to hurt me. I signed. 3 weeks later, I found out that Renee had used the power of attorney to change the mailing address on my bank statements to her address in Rock Hill. I found out by accident. I called the bank about a discrepancy on my account, a small charge I didn't recognize, and the woman on the phone mentioned in passing that my address had been recently updated. I told her that wasn't right. She read me the address. It was Renee's house. I sat in my kitchen for a long time after I hung up the phone. I want to tell you that I confronted Renee that same day, that I was strong and clear and knew exactly what to do. But the truth is, I sat at my kitchen table and I cried because I was scared, because I didn't fully understand what had happened or what it meant, because she was my daughter and I had nursed her through chickenpox and driven her to college and held her hand at her wedding, and I could not make what she had done make sense. My younger daughter, Patricia, lived in Asheville. She and I had always been closer in some ways. She was quieter, more careful with words, had never married. She taught middle school English and called me every Sunday. When I finally called her and told her what had happened, she was silent for a moment. Then she said, "Mom, you need a lawyer." I had never hired a lawyer in my life. Frank had handled the legal things when he was alive, the house closing, the will, the small business licensing for the woodworking he'd done on the side. I didn't even know where to start. Patricia came to Greenville the following weekend. She sat across from me at the kitchen table with her laptop open, and we found an elder law attorney 2 miles from my house. A woman named Christine who had been practicing for over 20 years. Patricia made the appointment. She drove me there herself. I want to stop here for a moment because I know someone reading this is probably asking the same thing I was asking myself. How could you not have known? How could you sign something without understanding it fully? And the honest answer is this. I trusted my child. For 63 years, I had operated on the belief that the people who loved you did not set traps for you. That trust was not stupidity. It was 38 years of building a family and believing it meant something. Christine was patient and direct. She explained what a durable power of attorney meant, what Renee could and could not legally do with it, and most importantly, that it could be revoked. I could revoke it. In writing. Immediately. I revoked it that same afternoon. Christine also asked me something that changed everything. Had I looked through Frank's files lately? His business files. Specifically, I hadn't. After Frank died, I had gone through the important papers, the will, the insurance, the bank accounts. But Frank had kept boxes of files in the basement from his woodworking business, and I had left those alone. They felt too much like him. Opening them felt like losing him all over again. I went home that night, and I went down to the basement. Frank had built custom cabinets and furniture, mostly for local contractors, for almost 15 years. Small operation, just him and one part-time helper. I knew the business had wound down in his last few years because of his health. I thought it had just faded out. What I found in those files took my breath away. Frank had incorporated the business Henderson Custom Woodworks LLC, and he had registered it in both our names. Not just his. Mine too. I was listed as a 50% owner. I hadn't known. He hadn't told me. Or maybe he had, and I'd forgotten. Or maybe he'd done it quietly on purpose, the way Frank did things. He was not a man who made announcements. He just took care of things. The business had dormant accounts I didn't know about. More than that, there was a piece of commercial property, a small workshop space outside town that Frank had purchased in 2017 and never mentioned. 1 acre, a steel building. Paid off. In the name of the LLC. Which meant half of it was mine. There was also a life insurance policy. I had missed a smaller supplemental policy Frank had taken out through his contractor association years ago that had somehow fallen through the cracks. The beneficiary was me. I sat on the basement floor surrounded by those files for 2 hours. I want to be honest with you, my first feeling was not triumph. My first feeling was grief. I wished so badly that Frank was there. I wished I could walk upstairs and find him in his chair and say, "Did you know about all this?" and hear him say, "Of course I did, Dot. I handled it." That was Frank. Quiet and solid and always 10 steps ahead. I called Christine the next morning. Over the following 4 months, we worked through everything. The life insurance paid out, not a life-changing sum, but enough to matter. Christine helped me liquidate the LLC properly, which included selling the workshop property. The commercial real estate market in that area had appreciated considerably since 2017. By the time everything was settled, I had more financial security than I'd had at any point in my adult life. I did not tell Renee. I want to explain why, because I think some people would say that was wrong of me, that I should have been transparent. But Renee had changed my bank mailing address without telling me. She had prepared legal documents in advance, printed them out on a Sunday, brought wine to soften me up, and handed me a pen. So I decided that my finances were my business, and I would share them when I was ready. I sold the Greenville house. I know that sounds drastic, but Christine had helped me see it clearly. The house was the thing Renee and Dale had been maneuvering toward from the beginning. Even after I revoked the power of attorney, even after I made clear I knew what they'd been doing, Dale had called me twice just to check in. And both times the conversation had drifted toward the house. Was I still thinking about downsizing? Had I looked into senior living communities? Had I thought about what the house would be worth now with the market the way it was? They wanted the house, and I decided they would not have it. I found a two-bedroom condominium in Asheville, 12 minutes from Patricia. Ground floor unit, HOA maintained exterior, a little patio with southern exposure where I could grow tomatoes in the summer. I paid cash. I was unpacking my kitchen boxes when Renee called. She had heard, I don't know how, probably someone in Greenville who knew us, that I had sold the house. She was furious in the particular way Renee got furious, which looked like calm, but felt like ice water. She said she couldn't believe I had made such a major decision without consulting her. She said she had been trying to help me. She said I was being irrational, that this was exactly why she had been worried about me managing things on my own. I let her finish. Then I said, Renee, you changed where my bank statements were being mailed without asking me. You brought legal paperwork to a Sunday dinner. I revoked that power of attorney 4 months ago. I am not irrational. I am careful. And I am done being managed. She hung up. She didn't call back for 6 weeks. In those 6 weeks, I painted my bedroom walls the color of sea glass, because Frank had always said that color was too feminine for the Greenville house, and I had let it go. I planted tomatoes on my patio. I had Sunday dinners with Patricia, who cried the first time she saw my new place. Not from sadness, but from something she said she couldn't name, but looked to me like relief. I started seeing a therapist. Her name was Dr. Okafor, and she worked with older adults, and she was the first person who said to me plainly, what Renee did was financial exploitation. It has a name. You are not overreacting. I had not known it had a name. I had not known that what happened to me was something that happened to enough people, that there were lawyers and therapists and hotlines specifically for it. I had thought I was just a mother who had been foolish enough to sign something she shouldn't have. Learning that it was a recognized pattern, that there was language for it, that I was not uniquely gullible, that helped more than I can say. Renee called on a Saturday in late spring. Her voice was different, quieter. She said she and Dale had been talking, and she wanted to apologize. She wanted to explain. She wanted to try to repair things. I asked her what she wanted to apologize for, specifically. There was a pause. She said she was sorry for overstepping, for making me feel like I couldn't manage on my own. I said, that's not what happened, Renee. Tell me what actually happened. Another pause. Longer. Then, I changed your mailing address. I shouldn't have done that. It wasn't everything, but it was something, and it was more than I had expected. I told her I was willing to talk, not on the phone, in person, and not in my home. I suggested a coffee shop, neutral ground. She agreed. She came alone. Without Dale, which I had hoped for. We sat across from each other, and I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, the gray starting at her temples, the way she held her coffee cup with both hands, the way she had since she was small, and I felt something complicated that I don't have a clean word for. Not forgiveness, exactly. Not anger either. Something more like standing at a crossroads and choosing which road you're willing to walk. I told her I loved her. I also told her I would never again sign anything she put in front of me. I told her that my finances, my home, and my choices were mine, and that if she wanted a relationship with me, she would have to accept that entirely and without negotiation. I told her I was not angry, but I was different now. The Dorothy who smiled and went along was gone. I wasn't bringing her back, Renee cried. I handed her a napkin. We have spoken twice since that coffee. The conversations were careful and short, and neither of us pretended they were easy. We're not where we were. I don't know if we'll ever be where we were, but I'm no longer pretending that where we were was something worth returning to. We were in a pattern where I disappeared so Renee could feel large, and I called that love, and it wasn't love. It was just a habit neither of us had examined. Patricia came over for dinner last week. She brought cornbread from the bakery near her school. and we sat on my little patio while the sun went down behind the ridge, and she said, "I'm proud of you, Mom." I told her I was proud of me too. That's not something I would have said 2 years ago. I had been raised to believe that saying you were proud of yourself was the same as being selfish. I know better now. Frank knew something I didn't. He had put my name on things quietly, without fanfare, without explanation, years before any of this happened. I think about that a lot. Whether he knew what might come after him, whether he had seen something in Renee I had refused to see, whether he was just a man who believed his wife deserved to have her name on things because she had earned it. I'll never know which it was. Maybe all of it. What I do know is this. I am 64 years old. I have a patio full of tomato plants. I have a daughter 12 minutes away who calls me every Sunday. I have sea glass walls in my bedroom. I have a lawyer's number saved in my phone, and I am not embarrassed about that, and I own every single thing in my name. That's not the ending I expected when I signed that paper on a Sunday in October. But it is the ending I have, and I have stopped wishing for a different one. If you are in a situation like mine, if someone you love is asking you to sign something, and you feel that small tightening in your chest, that sense that you're being managed rather than helped, please hear me. That feeling is information. You are allowed to say, "Not yet." You are allowed to say, "Let me have my own attorney look at this." You are allowed to say, "I love you, and I am not signing anything today." You spent your whole life earning what you have. Your name belongs on it. Keep it there. I've thought a lot about why things happened the way they did. Not obsessively, not in a way that keeps me up at night anymore, but thoughtfully. The way you turn a stone over to see what's underneath it. Renee didn't become who she was in October, the Sunday she sat across from me with that paperwork and a bottle of wine. That was just the day it became visible. The truth is that every time I went along, every time I smoothed things over instead of saying what was true, every time I let her certainty override my own knowing, I was teaching her something. I was teaching her that I could be managed, that if she waited long enough and spoke calmly enough, I would come around. I don't say this to blame myself. I say it because it's accurate. And I've found that accuracy is more useful than guilt. What Frank did, putting my name on those papers years before he died, quietly and without announcement, that was a kind of wisdom I didn't recognize until I needed it. He understood something I had not yet learned, that love without structure is just feeling, and feeling alone doesn't protect you. He built something real. He made sure my name was attached to it. That wasn't luck. That was a man who paid attention and acted on what he saw. The harder truth is that I had to lose my footing before I found it. I had to sit on a basement floor, surrounded by files, and feel the full weight of what I hadn't known, what I hadn't protected, what I had almost let slip through my hands because I trusted too easily. That floor was where I changed. Not dramatically, not all at once. But something settled in me down there that has not come loose since. Patricia was always the one I underestimated. Not in a mean way. I just thought of her as the quieter one, the one who needed more from me. It turned out she was the one who saw most clearly. She was the one who said lawyer before I had even finished telling her what happened. She was the one who made the appointment and drove me there and sat in the waiting room while I told Christine everything. I'd spent so many years trying to hold Renee together that I hadn't fully seen the daughter who had been holding herself together just fine all along. That's the thing about attention, wherever you put it grows. I had put mine in the wrong direction for a long time. What I know now is that integrity isn't a dramatic gesture. It's not confronting someone at the door or delivering a speech. It's 100 small decisions to ask one more question, to say not yet when your gut says, wait, to call the bank and follow up on a number that doesn't look right. Renee counted on me not following up. She counted on the version of me that trusted without verifying. That version of me is gone, and I don't mourn her. I'm 64. My tomatoes are coming in on the patio. Patricia is 12 minutes away. And every account, every deed, every piece of paper that matters has my name on it. Not because someone handed it to me, but because I went looking and I found it, and I held on to it. That's the whole story. That's all of it.